Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a star, she was an empire. On screen, she dazzled in diamonds, marriages, and melodramas. Off screen, her life was far more scandalous, heartbreaking, and shocking than Hollywood ever let on. Behind those violet eyes were secrets the world wasn't supposed to know, until now. So what was Elizabeth Taylor really hiding? Let's pull back the velvet curtain and uncover 15 shocking secrets she kept locked away. Born with a rare eyelash mutation, Elizabeth Taylor's legendary beauty wasn't entirely due to Hollywood's magic. In fact, her iconic violet eyes were framed by something so rare it bordered on myth. She was born with a genetic mutation called dystocia, which caused her to grow an extra row of eyelashes. On camera, it made her gaze almost hypnotic. Directors adored it. Audiences couldn't look away. But behind the allure, Taylor actually hated how the condition affected her early life. As a child, classmates teased her for having what they called freakish lashes. Doctors even worried the thick rows could irritate her corneas. Instead, the world fixated on her so-called natural eyeliner, fueling the narrative that Elizabeth was destined for stardom. What makes this secret so shocking is how much of her identity and Hollywood branding rested on something she never chose. Studios flaunted her lashes as part of her otherworldly beauty, while Taylor herself quietly battled insecurities. To her, it was less a glamorous gift and more a reminder of being different from everyone else. Still, Elizabeth learned to weaponize it. Those lashes became her armor on screen. While some stars fought for better lighting or costumes, Taylor only needed a close-up. And with each flutter, she unknowingly rewrote Hollywood's standard of beauty. What the world saw as perfection, Elizabeth always viewed as a burden. Her first kiss wasn't real. For most people, a first kiss is private, messy, maybe even awkward. For Elizabeth Taylor, it was scripted, directed, and lit under blinding studio lamps. At just 15, she filmed her first on-screen kiss in the 1947 movie Cynthia. Here's the twist. It happened before she had ever been kissed in real life. When the cameras rolled, Taylor leaned into actor Jimmy Lydon for the scene. By Hollywood standards, it was innocent. But to Elizabeth, the moment felt strangely more real than anything she had experienced off set. In later interviews, she admitted she preferred her movie kiss to her actual first kiss outside the studio a week later. That second kiss, with a teenage boy, felt clumsy. The film version? Perfect, polished, eternal. This secret reveals just how much Hollywood blurred the lines of her personal life. Elizabeth's coming-of-age moments were shaped by scripts, not spontaneity. Imagine being so controlled by the studio system that even your first kiss belonged to the public. The moment also haunted her because it reinforced a pattern. She would always live life twice, once for the cameras and once behind closed doors. For Taylor, the private rarely measured up to the public. It's easy to romanticize Elizabeth Taylor's glamorous screen image, but her first kiss proves a harsher truth. Even her most intimate milestones weren't hers to keep. They belonged to Hollywood, witness to tragedy. Death and Elizabeth Taylor had a complicated relationship. Twice in her life, she found herself standing at the edges of tragedy, next to men who would soon be gone forever. The first was James Dean. Taylor co-starred with him in Giant, and their bond was instantaneous. On the last night of his life, Dean confided in her about his struggles, his fears, and his feeling that he was running out of time. Just hours later, he was dead in a car crash. The news devastated her. For years, Taylor refused to publicly speak about their final conversation, keeping his words locked inside like a secret too painful to share. Then came Rock Hudson. In the 1980s, Taylor was one of the few people who knew the full truth about his declining health as AIDS ravaged his body. She spent time with him in his final days, even as the world speculated cruelly about his illness. To Elizabeth, he wasn't a tabloid headline. He was a friend fading before her eyes. Being present at the end of two Hollywood icons left scars Elizabeth never fully revealed. Publicly, she smiled, sparkled, and kept the cameras rolling. Privately, she carried the weight of being the last witness to lives cut short. The shocking truth? Elizabeth Taylor's career wasn't just built on diamonds and applause. It was also shadowed by the ghosts of those she loved and lost. twice. Eddie Fisher once pointed a gun at her. Elizabeth Taylor's love life was infamous, but few knew the darker undercurrents of her marriage to Eddie Fisher. Their romance began in scandal. She had been widowed after Mike Todd's tragic plane crash, and Fisher left his wife, Debbie Reynolds, to be with Elizabeth. Hollywood gossips labeled Taylor a homewrecker, but the real drama unfolded behind closed doors. According to reports, one night Fisher crept into their bedroom carrying a loaded gun. Taylor woke to see him standing over her. His chilling words, "Don't worry, I'm not going to shoot you. You're much too pretty." She brushed it off in public, but privately the moment rattled her. This wasn't the glamorous Hollywood love affair the press sold. It was a reminder that passion and obsession can easily slip into danger. For Taylor, the incident was a turning point. She realized that Fisher's instability could consume her if she didn't escape. Their marriage didn't last long, and in the end, Fisher became a cautionary chapter in her saga of 7 husbands. While the world saw Elizabeth as a femme fatale stealing Debbie Reynolds' man, the hidden truth was darker. She was the one living in fear. She secretly hated fame. To outsiders, Elizabeth, Taylor embodied the Hollywood dream: red carpets, flashing cameras, endless jewels. But in reality, she loathed the very thing that made her a legend. Taylor often said fame wasn't just a burden, it was a prison. She described herself as tortured by fame. Reporters hounded her daily, fans mobbed her, and every personal decision became front-page news. What the world didn't know was that Elizabeth longed for anonymity. She wanted to shop at the grocery store without flashbulbs or travel without security trailing her every step. She even called it infamy, suggesting she never felt truly celebrated, only exploited. At times, Taylor fantasized about disappearing completely, retreating from Hollywood's golden cage. Yet she never could. The machine demanded her presence, her beauty, her scandal. This shocking secret flips the narrative of Elizabeth Taylor's life. While most actresses fought for fame, she secretly despised it. Her public image was all diamonds and fur coats, but privately, Elizabeth would have traded it all for the simple gift of privacy. She won an Oscar for a role she hated. When Elizabeth Taylor won her first Academy Award for Butterfield 8 in 1961, the world applauded. The role of call girl Gloria Wandress cemented her as a powerhouse actress. But here's the twist. Elizabeth despised both the movie and the character. The part wasn't something she sought. She was pressured into it by MGM as part of her contract, forced to play a woman labeled the most scandalous woman of the day. Taylor later admitted she found the character degrading and uncomfortable, especially since tabloids already painted her as scandalous for her marriages and affairs. When her name was called at the Oscars, Elizabeth smiled and held the golden statue high. But privately, she felt no pride. Winning for a role she hated was like being rewarded for a wound. She wanted recognition for work she loved, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof or Suddenly Last Summer, not for a role she had been cornered into. This irony became one of her biggest secrets. Her proudest public moment was also her most hollow. The first actor to demand $1 million in 1963, Elizabeth Taylor shattered Hollywood tradition by becoming the first actor, male or female, to secure $1 million paycheck. The film was Cleopatra, and Taylor's demand shocked studio executives. No one had dared to ask for that much money before. What makes this story even more shocking is that Elizabeth didn't stop at the million. She negotiated perks, a cut of the film's profits, deluxe travel, and complete creative control over her costumes and appearance. The result? The studio spent a fortune, making Cleopatra the most expensive movie of its era. To some, it looked like greed. But Elizabeth saw it differently. She was tired of studios exploiting stars while pocketing massive profits. If they wanted her name, her face, her time, they would pay for it. She raised the bar not just for herself, but for every actor who came after. Behind the headlines, though, Taylor endured crushing pressure. Her salary made her a target, and when Cleopatra spiraled into production chaos, the blame fell on her. Elizabeth's $1 million demand was more than a paycheck. It was a revolution. But it was also a secret burden that made her Hollywood's most envied and resented star. She ran an illegal AIDS drug network. Perhaps Elizabeth Taylor's most shocking secret wasn't about jewels or marriages, but about defiance. In the 1980s and 1990s, when the AIDS crisis was decimating communities and the government dragged its feet on treatment, Taylor took matters into her own hands. Using her Bel Air mansion as headquarters, she helped smuggle experimental AIDS drugs from other countries into the United States. Patients who had no options found lifelines through Taylor's underground network. It was risky, illegal, and could have destroyed her career if exposed. But Elizabeth didn't care. She once said, "I decided that somebody had to do something. That something meant leveraging her fame, her wealth, and her connections to challenge a broken system." Beyond public speeches and fundraisers, she literally turned her home into a safe house. This secret, hidden for years, shows a side of Elizabeth Taylor few suspected: the fighter. Not for herself, but for others society ignored. She wasn't just a movie star playing dress-up in diamonds. She was a woman willing to break the law for justice. Private visits no one saw. Elizabeth Taylor's activism for AIDS wasn't just about speeches and fundraisers. Behind the curtain, she did something almost no one knew about. She made private visits to hospital wards filled with patients battling the illness, without cameras, without journalists, without her publicist. In an era when AIDS was demonized, when even doctors avoided contact, Elizabeth walked into rooms no one else would. She held hands, whispered comfort, and treated patients as human beings instead of tabloid scandals. Some recalled how she brushed hair away from foreheads or joked lightly to break the tension. What makes this secret so powerful is that she deliberately avoided publicity. In Hollywood, where stars measured their worth in headlines, Elizabeth craved none for this. To her, these visits were sacred. They weren't performances, they were human connections. For patients abandoned by their families or friends, Elizabeth's presence was a lifeline. She gave them dignity in their final days, even when the world outside branded them untouchable. It's one thing to speak out on a stage. It's another to show up in silence. This was Elizabeth Taylor at her most shocking, not as a glamorous icon, but as a quiet, defiant angel in the shadows. A diva on the Flintstones set. By the 1990s, Elizabeth Taylor had cemented her legacy. So when she agreed to appear in the Flintstones movie as Fred Flintstone's mother-in-law, the production expected a Hollywood queen. What they got was a queen with demands. Taylor reportedly insisted on receiving a gift every single day she worked on set. Not just flowers or chocolates, unique, curated gifts. And her dressing room? It had to be decorated entirely in green, her favorite color, filled with greenery. Even Steven Spielberg, who was a producer, allegedly paid out of pocket to meet her expectations. To crew members, it was diva behavior. But to Elizabeth, it was non-negotiable. After decades of giving herself to the industry, she demanded a little spoiling in return. This secret is shocking because it shows the duality of Elizabeth Taylor. On one hand, she risked her career smuggling AIDS drugs. On the other, she wanted gifts just to show up on set. Both sides were real. Both sides made her Elizabeth. For the press, Taylor's demands would have been scandalous. But privately, they reveal a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to ask for it. A body held together by scars. Elizabeth Taylor's public image was flawless. Jewels, gowns, luminous beauty. But privately, her body bore the scars of a lifetime of pain. She endured more than 70 hospitalizations and at least 20 major surgeries throughout her life. She battled scoliosis, pneumonia, a benign brain tumor, hip replacements, and near-fatal bouts of illness. Doctors sometimes called her a medical miracle because she survived health crises that would have ended other lives. Yet Elizabeth rarely spoke about the toll. On set, she would cover bruises or scars with makeup. In interviews, she joked about her 9 lives. But behind the humor was exhaustion. Taylor once confided that she often wondered if her body was betraying her, piece by piece. The shocking truth? Her dazzling presence on red carpets was often an illusion. Underneath the diamonds, Elizabeth's body was stitched, scarred, and struggling to keep up with her legend. Yet she kept going. Each time she fell, she rose again, turning her medical battles into another hidden chapter of resilience. The ping-pong diamond. Elizabeth Taylor's love affair with diamonds is legendary. From the Taylor-Burton diamond to the Krupp stone, her collection was unmatched. But hidden among the world's most famous jewels was one of the strangest gifts she ever received: the ping-pong diamond. The story goes that during a friendly game of table tennis with Richard Burton, Elizabeth beat him. Burton, ever dramatic, presented her with a diamond ring as her prize. Compared to her other stones, it was modest, but Taylor adored it. The shocking twist? She often wore the ping-pong diamond publicly and pretended that was the jewel admirers were gawking at, not the multi-million-dollar rocks she also owned. It was her private joke, a way to poke fun at the public's obsession with her collection. In truth, the ping-pong diamond symbolized something rarer than wealth: joy. For Elizabeth, it wasn't the size of the stone, but the memory it carried. A silly game, a laugh shared, a fleeting moment of normalcy. For a woman whose jewels often symbolize scandal or extravagance, this tiny ring was her secret reminder that sometimes the smallest things shine brightest. Overwhelmed with despair after Mike Todd's death, Elizabeth Taylor's love story with producer Mike Todd was one of her happiest chapters. He adored her, spoiled her, and treated her like a queen. But in 1958, tragedy struck. Todd's private plane, the Liz, crashed in New Mexico, killing him instantly. Elizabeth was only 26 and utterly devastated. In the days following the crash, Taylor spiraled into despair. Friends later revealed that she confessed to being so heartbroken that she considered giving up on life. At one point, she even said she had a vision of Todd speaking to her, telling her it wasn't her time yet. That vision, she claimed, gave her the strength to carry on. This secret was hidden because Elizabeth never wanted the public to see her as weak. The tabloids painted her as quickly moving on with Eddie Fisher, but they never knew how close she came to breaking completely. The truth is, beneath her resilience, Elizabeth Taylor carried a shadow. Todd's death left a wound that never fully healed, and for a moment, the world almost lost her too. Conversion to Judaism. After Mike Todd's death, Elizabeth made a deeply personal decision that shocked even her closest friends. She converted to Judaism. Many assumed it was simply a tribute to her late husband, but for Elizabeth, it became a defining part of her identity. She studied Hebrew, embraced Jewish customs, and even took the Hebrew name Elisheba Rachel. At a time when Hollywood preferred stars to appear glamorous but not spiritual, Taylor's public declaration of faith was unexpected. It also carried risk. Anti-Semitism was alive and well in America. What makes this a shocking secret is how seriously Elizabeth lived it. This wasn't a publicity stunt. She attended synagogue, raised her children with Jewish traditions, and supported Israel in times of crisis. In interviews, Taylor admitted that the decision made her feel closer to Todd, but also more grounded in herself. Converting wasn't just an act of mourning. It was her way of reclaiming identity in a world that constantly tried to script her life. Elizabeth Taylor, forever branded a Hollywood icon, also quietly carried the weight of her faith. Lifelong love for Richard Burton. Elizabeth Taylor's marriages were tabloid fodder, but one man remained her true obsession: Richard Burton. They married twice, divorced twice, and filled headlines with their explosive fights. Yet privately, Elizabeth's children revealed that Burton was always the one. Even after their final divorce, the two exchanged passionate letters. Some of those letters, discovered years later, showed Burton confessing he would love her until his last breath. Taylor kept them tucked away, revisiting them like sacred relics. The shocking truth? Even as she remarried others, Elizabeth never stopped loving Richard. In her final years, when she looked back at her tumultuous love life, Burton stood apart. He was the storm she couldn't escape, the fire she couldn't extinguish. Elizabeth Taylor built a legend on jewels, scandals, and beauty. But the secret she carried was simple. Her heart belonged to Richard Burton until the end. Elizabeth Taylor dazzled the world with diamonds, husbands, and scandals. But behind the glamour lived a woman of secrets, some dark, some defiant, all unforgettable. From private grief to daring activism, she was far more than a screen goddess. These hidden truths prove that Elizabeth wasn't just a star. She was a storm, leaving beauty and chaos in her wake. Which of these secrets shocked you most? Let us know, and don't forget to subscribe for more.